most revered and respected Swamiji, respected Professor Indra Madam, my good friend Professor Francis Clooney, a well-known scholar in Civilisational, Dr. Radha Raghunathan, and my dear friends and devotees of our revered Sadguru. At the outset, I am grateful to our revered Swamiji for giving me an opportunity to make few comments on the T.R. Pattabiraman Memorial Lecture delivered by Professor C.T. Indra. I was very much fascinated by this wonderful lecture delivered by Professor Indra because she has given us some important insights regarding historiography, Indian culture, linguistic division, and other issues related to it. And I am also grateful to Srimati Srividya, the daughter of Sri Pattabiraman, who was very kind enough to institute this very important endowment lecture in Sri Vishnu. And I salute my Guru, Shrihariprasd ji, for asking me to make few comments on this wonderful lecture delivered by Professor Indra. Of course, I know very well that I am not competent enough to make comments on such a wonderful lecture delivered by Professor Indra. And moreover, all of us know that the endowment lectures are not to be questioned or not to be commented upon. But mine is only a friendly comment, or I would say even friendly quarrel, because I used to have my friendly quarrel with Professor Indra ji always when she was in Madras University, 3rd floor, we were in 2nd floor. And we used to meet quite often and we used to deliberate on various things, especially on critical theory. I hope she would remember that, especially on critical theory, postmodernism, and existentialism. I still remember one very important incident. She was very kind enough to invite me for a lecture to be delivered for the faculty members of English department. I mean, the colleges, representing colleges and all. There were nearly 40 English professors, and she has asked me to give a lecture on existentialism and phenomenology. I delivered a lecture on existentialism and phenomenology. And in my lecture, I casually mentioned that it is necessary for the English professors to read thinkers like Sartre, Heidegger, and others. And Madam immediately said that it is necessary for philosophers also to read literature because both cannot be separated. Yes, that is very fresh in my memory. But always I used to learn a lot from her because she's a very wonderful scholar and also a humble scholar. Many of you may not know that. When she was the syndicate member of Madras University, a powerful post which was given to her by the governor of Tamil Nadu. She is a nominated syndicate member. Very powerful post. But at that time also, she was very humble, very simple, and many non-teaching staffs, of course we also, teaching staff, we used to go to her asking us to help us in some way or other in the university administration or in the university thing. And she was very kind enough to attend to all our needs. So she is not only a great academician, but also a great human being. And also, I don't know whether I am permitted to say that, but I am tempted to say this, that she has been suppressed like anything. And she could thrive well because of her knowledge and scholarship, my dear friends. I know many things because she has shared many things with me. Such a wonderful scholar. Why I am mentioning this is such a wonderful scholar, great scholar, a renowned scholar, and who has been appreciated by scholars throughout the world, has been suppressed like anything in the department. I don't mind saying, but she could ignore all this, I should say, and she was able to withstand all this because of her scholarship and knowledge. She could gain importance in academic world. And also I am very much tempted to say, please forgive me for extending this. She was also a member of the Jnanapeeth Award. And in the selection, she made a very beautiful selection. That is, she has selected or nominated, along with other members, of course, Jayakanthan for the Jnanapeeth Award. I consider it as a great privilege for all Tamilians, and at this situation, I have to make a reference to this. Now, I'll come to my comments on our wonderful talk. Madam Indra has pointed out, by citing Swamiji and the Sri Vishnu Mohan Foundation, that the religious institutions must engage themselves to remove the misconceptions about India, which is purposely propagated by the so-called anti-Indians. And one of the suggestions offered by Professor Indra is how the religious and spiritual organization in India can give a counter to the West, especially to those countries and institutions which propagate and support anti-Indian approach, which is a wrong model for our youngsters. Here one must mention the great contribution made by Swami Shrihariprasd, because he has been tirelessly working for the unity of India, celebrating interreligious dialogue, peace dialogues through seminars and conferences to bring out the unity among the people of India. And his various lectures delivered at, I'm referring to our Swamiji. He has delivered lectures in various universities and institutions that would prove that Sri Vishnu Mohan Foundation has been doing an immense service to the humanity. Sometimes, friends, I should say this, sometimes I feel that what the universities and colleges fail to do in imparting knowledge about various philosophical and spiritual themes, the foundation has been doing continuously without any break, thus keeping the Indian spirit alive. And also, I must mention the great contribution made by our Swamiji with regard to interreligious dialogue, because Professor Indra has been asking the role of the religious and spiritual institutions. Here I would like to make a reference to one important event that took synagogue in Kerala, which was established in 12th century AD and which was recently renovated by our revered Swamiji. In fact, I also visited that place along with our Swamiji, and this synagogue had no Torah. Torah is a sacred book of the Jews, and they were without the Torah for several decades, and now they have acquired one because of our Swamiji's effort. So such approaches would remove the negative attitude towards India, which is propagated by some of the foreign countries, including Indian corporates. And Professor Indra has been talking on the problematics of historiography. And also she points out how technology divides people. And this is a dangerous situation for a country like India, which is built on Indian ethos and values. And I would always insist that the uniqueness of India lives on two important conceptual models. One is the world of great traditions which we have been following, and other is the modern world of science and technology, which of course is very much essential. But now the question is, which is the need of the hour? This has been discussed in detail by many of our academicians as well as our spiritual leaders. Professor Indra, quoting Rajiv Malhotra, argues the necessity to revive the wisdom tradition. Very beautifully she has pointed out that there is a need for reviewing or reviving the wisdom tradition which is represented through our Indian culture and civilization. And here I would like to point out another important role played by Sri Vishnu Mohan Foundation in bringing out the Indian culture and values, which is very much has to be emphasized in the modern world. In one of his very important lecture delivered by our Swami Shrihariprasd ji on the title Indian Identity and Cultural Continuity. This is a lecture delivered by him in the year 2017 in Indian Philosophical Congress, and we have transcribed what he spoke, and this is very fascinating. That's why I want to quote that, because he made a distinction between common identity and distinct identity. I hope Swamiji is there. This distinction is something remarkable, a distinction which Swamiji has made with regard to common identity and distinct identity. I would like to quote his words of wisdom. I quote Swamiji: when the Jews settled in India, they created their own unique culture, and yet they are also part of the common culture. Everybody has its own distinctive identity. Every community, every caste, and every religion have their own identity. And if it has something in common with the rest of Indian society, instead of seeing separate identity, always I, that is Swami Hariprasad, use the word distinct identity. Now this very important distinction between distinct identity and a common identity is something which is very much important at the present historical context. Because in the name of culture, one cannot follow the distinction, the distinct identity of one's own. For example, India being a multicultural society has different states, and all these different states practice their own language, their own method of worship, etc. So this has to be celebrated, and this has to be taken into account. So we cannot simply ignore all this distinct identity which has been playing a very important role. Professor Indra very beautifully talks about the significance of historiography. Now, the historiography is very important for not only the historians but also for philosophers, because we try to develop what is known as a the Indian historiography in the present context. This means that very beautifully, Madam Indra has pointed out that how our Indian historians celebrate. This is a very important passage, please, sir. Of course, I know you have my material, I mean, my written version, but I would like to read it because I've been very much impressed by our writing. She says, there is, Indian historians celebrate small dynasty like Lodhis, at the same time neglecting the role of Chola or Vijayanagar or Pallava, who have made substantial contribution. And I really appreciate Professor Indra for quoting Sanjeev Sanyal, because she has pointed out how, quoting of course Sanjeev Sanyal, how Indians, especially the South Indians, had the knowledge of maritime. There, the maritime history of India has been very much emphasized by Sanyal, which has been quoted a number of times by Professor Indra. So Professor Indra points out how in the writings of historians like, for example, Vikram Sambat, we see the need for shifting the very paradigm of Indian history which has been taught to us so far. This is a very beautiful statement, I would say, because we have been conditioned by our historians, and their way of approach to history or historical issues are not perfect, which means our mind is trained in such a way that we have to accept only this type of history, which is incorrect. Now, for example, Vikram Sambat says that his criticism, namely the Delhi-centered historians obscure the other Indian dynasties, must be taken very seriously. In fact, he says that there is a historical wound which is a civilisational wound. The arguments of Shashi Tharoor that in the name of remembering the past wounds, we should not demonize the present citizens and make history an imagined battlefield, in quotes, must be critiqued. Definitely this has to be critiqued. Vikram's counter argument in this regard is very much valid, because history always imparts a lesson. We cannot forget that. We must really congratulate Professor Indra for making the dialogue not only interesting one, but also one which gives a guidance to study history or historiography. Now, she has made a reference to how Indian historians, especially that Hindus, quite often it has been said that they don't have a sense of history. This is a very important point which quite often discussed in philosophical circles. Quite often it is said that Indians do not have a historical sense, but governed by myth and Puranas. Indian historiography starts with Vedas and Vedic literature. Of course, there is nothing wrong in talking or starting the historiography with the Vedic tradition. The Idihasas and the Puranas are the rich source of historical facts. This is my view. There are many resemblances between the Greek historia and the Sanskrit word idihasa, which is referred in the story and history. And this is very much essential because when we are talking about Vedic historiography, this is my view, it is also necessary to look and see whether there is nothing prior to this Vedic culture. It is a partial view of history if you start Indian historiography with the Vedic times alone. The historiography of Sanskritization or Sanskritized historiography started, of course, with Vedic period. Scholars like Parpola, Gnoroza and others argue that speakers of Dravidian languages were productive of cultures far back as the 3rd millennium BC. This means there are scholars, there are historians like John or Mark, that the speakers of Dravidian languages existed in India from the beginning of man in the subcontinent. So any historiography of India, if it is written in an impartial way, would benefit the entire humanity. For example, of course, Professor Indra also pointed out, for example, the recent archaeological evidences found in Keeladi in Tamil Nadu shows the carbon samples which are collected from Keeladi excavation resulted as the 6th century BCE. So this clearly shows that it is necessary to consider the facts which are available, and while writing the historiography, one must consider all these aspects. This has been emphasized by many Western thinkers also. I would also like to state here that there is always 3 perspectives which are available in history. Of course, I'm not going to present that. What I'm trying to say here is, Indra, in her very interesting talk, makes a reference to the Nehruvian model of history, Nehru's model of history. Commenting on that, one philosopher, some of you may know the name, Professor S.S. Barlinge, is from the Pune University. He points out, quoting Nehru, that when Nehru wrote the book Discovery of the World, he was under a certain burden. He uses the word certain burden. History of the past certainly becomes a burden in a sense, says Professor Barling. But what is interesting is Nehru emancipates himself from this burden. And it is said, now, Professor Barlinge says, I quote him, now there is a sense of belonging, and he looks history as manifolding the vision of future. It is a transition from burden to a plan with the help of the power that man has acquired from history, unquote. So this very important approach of a philosopher Barlinge with regard to Nehru is very important, because Nehru could understand history as power and plan later. So in his writing, especially in the discovery of India, we see a transition from burden to power and plan. Of course, we have other models like Tilak model, and also we have the Kausambi model and others, and which are very much essential for us to understand the Indian historiography. I'll skip some of the passages, but here I would like to talk about what Professor Indra has made, the distinction between cultural and linguistic divide and economic as well as societal concerns. These are some of the important issues very beautifully discussed by Indra in an excellent way. But we must remember the fact that India, being a country which is supported by the plurality of culture, always appreciates the culture and adapts itself to the situation. I always believe that there is a core element in the culture and also the periphery. The periphery can be changed, but not the core. But at the same time, when culture, of course, all of us know, it is the guardian of the people. It reacts when there is a threat to it. When the rights of a particular cultural group are affected or violated, there is always a protest, and the best example is available in the Jallikattu. Now, I would like to state this is another very important passage, which is very beautifully explained by Professor Indra, is the cherry-picked data and the data mining. Now, this is a very, very, very beautiful approach which he has made, because all of us know culture endows people with their identity. Some agencies in India and outside try to project India in a negative way, and she has expressed her feeling with regard to that, and I also share her feeling, because some of our Indian agencies as well as outside agencies, they are trying to project India in a negative way and try to ignore the importance of Indian civilization and culture, And this has been very much highlighted by Indra, Professor Indra. And how do they do that? By this cherry-picked data or data mining, they try to project India in a dim light to gain the popular attraction of the Western world. I think it is a need of the hour to demolish and change such a wrong picture about India, which has been done by some of the NGOs in India and outside. And unfortunately, Indian corporates are supporting such moves, which is very painful, and it must be the duty of each and every individual to protect India from such criticism. And there are scholars like Rajiv Malhotra, then Vijay Vishwanathan and others, they are giving such a counter move to this, but it is also the responsibility of all of us to join hands with them and try to see that the negative picture which is given by the foreigners as well as our own NGOs will be removed in a proper way. Now, the last point I would like to point out is that she has been pointing out Orientalism, New Orientalism. When I read, actually, friends, I must tell you that I read the talk. She was kind enough to send the talk to me. I read it once, then I read it second time also, but it was so convincing that I felt immediately recording my views, because at each and every point which she has made, it is not only a mere message which she has given, she has provoked me a lot. It is like, it is like a text which prompts you to perform a particular action. She knows in the hermeneutical tradition this is very common. So she prompted me to write, and each and every point which Professor Indra has made is very much important in the context of Indian civilization and culture. And one thing which struck me was the new Orientalism, which has been, new colonism or new Orientalism, I would say, which has been very much in progress. Now, Edward Said, some of you are aware of this name, he wrote a book, Orientalism, and he usually, in the writings, he could talk about how the colonial practice was based on the conception of Oriental people as being less civilized than people of the West. In fact, he gives a very beautiful distinction between the Western people and Oriental people, and say that they are civilized, whereas the Oriental are not civilized, etc., etc. Now, I feel that once again this picture is some scholars are trying to promote this picture by developing this new Orientalism, which is used as a tool to divide Indian people, Indian mind. I think that we have to be very cautious with regard to that. And this ill-motivated organization are doing great injustice to India, and it is possible for us. It is a need of the hour. I would say it is a need of the hour to revive our own tradition. This is very important, and also modify or change it whenever and wherever necessary. We do not need any external agencies, friends, to correct some of our mistakes. I don't argue that we are all perfect. No human being can be perfect. There are some defects, but this can be rectified by us, no doubt. But we don't need any other external agency who can stand outside and tell us, who can guide us, or who can instruct us to do something. That we don't need such advice from anybody. So India is a country which has given direction to the entire world, and we are not here to take the advice from the foreign countries. especially when they are trying to give a negative picture of India. Not that we are not ready to take direction, but at the same time, we should not be guided by this approaches. So the role of India as a non-aligned country has been appreciated by the world for its contribution to world peace, culture, and civilization. So I'm very grateful to Professor Indra, who has given me an opportunity to rethink these some of the concepts which she has emphasized. Very beautiful analysis. In fact, she provoked me a lot to write a detailed work, I should say, on these topics. Because our entire discussion was very much theory loaded, and each and every point has to be analyzed carefully and properly. And this is a very beautiful, one of the beautiful endowment lectures which I heard, and I should be very grateful to her. And I also am grateful to our Swamiji for giving me this opportunity. Of course, as I said in the beginning, I'm not competent to give a comment on this interesting endowment lecture. And also, I'm grateful to the Pattabiraman family, Sri Pattabiraman family, who has instituted this endowment lecture. And that gave me an opportunity to rethink some of the concepts. So I'm grateful to all of you for your patient listening. And I'm sorry I could not be, I cannot come back in the evening because I got another online lecture to be delivered on the theme Indian philosophical tradition and Western philosophical methods. So I have to be here by 5 o'clock. So there is some program which they are doing on online. So that is one of the reasons why I could not come over there. And also I'm staying little far away. So please pardon me for my absence. But I learned a lot from the lecture of Professor Indra and also from my good friend Professor Clooney. He has been doing a wonderful service to Indian philosophical tradition, especially to Shrihariprasd. So with these few words, I am grateful to our Swamiji and the great devotees of Sri Vishnu Mohan Foundation and Sadguru. Pranam to Sadguru. Namaste.
Thank you, Professor Panneerselvam, for your response. I now invite Dr. Radha Raghunandan to share her response to Professor Indra's talk. A quick brief on Dr. Radha Raghunandan. She earned a MA in Indian philosophy from University of Madras, MA in applied Sanskrit from Shastra, and a PhD from University of Madras. She is a researcher, author and translator, editor and reviewer of Vedanta-related works and manuscripts. Currently, she is honorary director and general editor at Adyar Library and Research Center. She's presented several papers at national and international seminars and symposia, and has published several articles in reputed research journals and newspapers. Dr. Radha Raghunandan, please.